scariest things, whether you're on grid or off grid, is having a fire break out.
So today we're talking about fire prevention at the off-grid cabin in the wilderness. Hi guys. Well, with all the recent news reports in the media about the California fires, it's a devastating issue, and it's something that we want to talk to you a little bit about today, because what's happened is it's made us really conscious about our fire safety here at the off-grid cabin. And so today we're going to talk to you about that. But our hearts go out to those who've lost loved ones and so much property as well.
It really causes one to think about the dangers of fire, whether you're on grid or off grid.
We have no running water here, no hydro, and we do have a generator. We have forests all around us, and some of it can be quite thick and gnarly, but there's thousands of acres of it. So that is something that we are very limited in being able to really do anything about.
We do have a fire department that we can call, but being off grid and having the trail not accessible during the winter, I don't know if they'd be able to get here.
No, not with all the snow on the cabin trail, not a chance. So that's something that we have to contend with on our own. And since we have been here at the off-grid cabin, the lot was, the spot all around the cabin. It was originally, we had some foundational sand and gravel put in to build the cabin on. And so, the grasses and everything were at a bare minimum for many years. But I do notice that the saplings and whatnot, 30, 40, 50 feet outside and around the cabin are starting to grow back. And I can see a lot of them are like 3 and 4 year old saplings. And it's time, I think this spring, that we will get on to thinning a lot of that stuff out. There's a job for us.
Yeah.
We've also heard in the media over the last few years about the risk of forest fire increasing as temperatures warm and the forest gets drier. Also, we are concerned about that as well. Fire can happen at any time. Lightning could strike. And when we see or hear a loud crack of lightning during a storm, we kind of keep our eyes open in the forest for several hours after that, because you never know if a fire can break out. A lot of people in an off-grid situation, if they have access to water real handy, then they can get a pump and a fire hose and get that under pressure. Helps mitigate and reduce the risk of property damage should a fire break out.
When clearing out brush and cleaning up land, it's a good idea to keep all your piles of brush away from other flammables. Keep them far away from your cabin or your house, your homestead. And that way, if anything does ever happen, it doesn't pose a danger to the buildings.
Same goes with your firewood, your stacks of firewood. If a pile of firewood should go up in flames and you've got it anywhere near your homestead or cabin, then that could put it at risk as well. Speaking of firewood, let's get into firewood burning. This is a subject that I care about, as I have actually experienced a chimney fire in the wood stove many years ago, and I have talked about this on the channel before, but in short, basically a fire broke out in the upper chimney, and I was under the impression the chimney was clean, so I didn't have to worry about having a chimney fire, but I was wrong. So basically, one of the main things I could say for those that are planning on burning in a wood stove and they're not that experienced with that, number one, when you've installed your wood stove, get it inspected by a professional. In Canada, we have the WET certification. WET stands for Wilderness Exaggeration of the Timely Wood Stove Burning People, right? No, what is that?
I'm sorry.
What does WET stand for?
Wood Energy. I don't know.
Technicians. Anyway, there is a body that we'll post it. It'll be here somewhere. We'll make it. Anyway, And that is it's for wet certification. Basically, it's an expert who is certified in the field of wood burning stoves. They inspect them, and they'll do chimney cleaning services for you as well. So that's a good idea. When you start out, have a completely cleaned and inspected chimney and wood stove. From that point on, when you start burning wood in your wood stove, the wood should be dry. That is, if you process your own firewood, then after cutting the trees and splitting the logs and stacking it, it needs a full year to dry in open air, and it needs possibly 2 years to dry so it's ultimate. So you want to burn dry wood that's at least 1 year old, and you can tell that it's dry with by the way it looks and the check marks on it. You want to, preferably, if you have access to the different types of wood, for instance, hardwood and softwood, then that can sometimes help in your burning management and how hot that you're going to get a fire in your wood stove. The softwood burns at a slightly less temperature as far as heat output and BTUs go. Hardwood burns at a much higher BTU output, and both of those types of wood will ignite at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and you have flame. If you continue raising the internal temperature of that wood stove, the flame will go from the internal temperature will go from 450 up to 600, 700 degrees, and when it reaches that 600 degrees, that's when the smoke and the gases that are coming out of the wood that are unburned will actually ignite in the wood stove. And having an airtight wood stove will help to re-burn those gases before they reach into the chimney.
Glenn does 99% of the firewood making around our homestead. Watching a person start the fire and everything, it looks really easy. It is easy. But Glenn was talking about the temperatures going from like 400, 500, 600. Be really careful and keep your eye on the thermometer because it can climb like super fast.
Yeah, it can.
And it scared the bejeebers out of me one day because I wasn't totally paying attention and it got really hot really fast.
So by the time you went to shut the damper down, the temperature was still rising.
Yeah. Yeah, I did everything Glenn told me to do. I was here by myself, which is the worst thing. And it did calm down, but holy cow, it sure taught me a lesson about keeping my eye on the wood stove.
One of the best things you can do, in my opinion, is not only have a clean chimney, but have a thermometer inside a probe that goes inside of the chimney, so it can monitor the exact temperature of what the heat output is in the wood stove. Now there are single wall chimney pipes that you can put a magnetic thermometer on, and that works well too. But ultimately, having a probe, in my opinion, is the best. That's what we have here. The temperature readouts are different on both of those. A magnetic one, as opposed to a probe, the range of temperatures it's different because one you're just measuring the temperature of the metal of the pipe. The other one you're actually measuring inside. So take note of that. But once you've started burning, then the stove, if it's efficient, will burn nicely for quite some time and heat up your space. It's just a very nice heat, and we really enjoy watching the wood stove.
Okay, just a little thing. You were talking about single-walled and double-walled stovepipe. What's the difference between single pipe and double for a stovepipe?
Well, usually you have the standard is a 6-inch single-wall pipe, and that can be useful actually if you want to release a lot of the heat from your stove through that pipe. The first couple feet could be single wall. Sometimes there's ovens that are built around that to release as much heat in there as you can. And then after that point, there could be a 7-inch double wall chimney pipe. There's an airspace in between the two pipes and some insulation as well, fireproof insulation and so forth. So the double wall pipe is much safer, and it does hold some of the heat back and makes the heat go directly up the chimney and out the top. Now, what's the advantage of having a double pipe? Even though you're not getting maybe as much heat into your space, the thing is that that double wall, once that heat is going up the chimney pipe and it hits the double wall, with the insulation, the temperatures inside of that chimney will then stay approximately the same right up until the opening where the smoke and gases get released. If you have single wall all the way up, those gases and smoke can cool and settle on the top of the chimney pipe inside the chimney. And it creates a layer of what is known as creosote. And the creosote from the wet wood, that's why we don't burn wet wood. The drier the wood, the less creosote there will be. The hotter that you burn, the less creosote there will be, because the smoke is burned up and there's no particulate to settle on a cold chimney pipe. So by having a double wall, it keeps the heat the same all the way up, so that those warm gases can get all the way out from the chimney without creosote slowly building on that chimney. Now, there have been cases where a cold chimney pipe at the very top, especially in minus 30 degree temperatures and whatnot, where the top of the chimney can get quite cold, especially if it's really long, a very tall chimney, then that can get a lot colder, and as such, the creosote can gather on the inside of that pipe layer by layer by layer, and maybe only the top 2 or 3 feet is where it might gather, but it'll get thicker and thicker and thicker, and it could, by the end of a season, actually close off and choke off the airflow in the wood stove, causing smoke to pour back into the room. So if that ever happens, it's possible that the chimney could be clogged or obstructed in some way.
Now, before it gets clogged and obstructed, can you still tell by the way that the air flows up?
Yeah, not necessarily the airflow, but you can tell if you go outside and it's a calm night or the breeze is working just right, you can smell creosote burning. Like you can smell the creosote out of your chimney pipe. You don't want to always continually be smelling that. That's telling you basically that you're in a build-up process.
And creosote really stinks. I don't know how to describe the smell of creosote. They used to use creosote to preserve the railway ties. If you're near a railway track when it's really hot out, you can smell the creosote.
Yeah.
But it really stinks.
The enemy of a wood stove burner is creosote. The way that you reduce the risk of creosote building, therefore that you're reducing the risk of having a chimney fire, is by burning hotter. That's why you want a good chimney setup and a good installation, and you know that it's a good setup. And if you burn hot enough, up to about 600 degrees, maybe even 700, once every half dozen burns or so, then that will actually help to burn off any layers of creosote that may have built up in the 5 burns previous. So maybe you're not always at the cabin where you're burning every single day. That's why I say every 5 or 6 burns, have a hot fire if you've been burning low, right? And low and slow, especially during the shoulder seasons in the spring and in the fall. The tendency is to maybe not put as much wood in, but at the same time, you cut the dampers back because you don't want to get yourself heated out of house and home kind of a thing, right? So instead, you'll cut the damper back, but then now you're getting a colder chimney and the creosote starts to build up. So about every 5 or 6 fires, if you burn and get the good hot fire going, get the thermometer going up to 600 or 700 degrees for an hour or so, that will help reduce the risk of creosote building and burn off any creosote that is building up. And now you're starting off with a clean chimney again. Many times we've actually had a chimney sweep come in, clean out our wood stove after a full season of burning. I asked him to please show us what he's gathered as far as creosote, because we'd like to know the condition of the chimney and how our burning habits are. And he showed us basically a palm full of reddish, rusty kind of brown ash, and that was it. So he said, "No, you're definitely burning hot enough."
Now, anyone who is overwhelmed by all this information, like it is a lot of information to take in, but once I learned how to burn, Glenn was quite comfortable in it, and I understood it all, that took away all the concern that I had that what's going to happen if we have a house fire or something.
Yeah, understand. I learned from my mistake. I made a mistake, and I was a little bit too trusting that the wood stove was in fact clean when it wasn't. So as long as you're starting off with a clean chimney and then you have good burning practices, learn what your wood is all about, make sure it's dry, and have a thermometer on the wood stove, and you'll learn how your particular wood stove acts depending on the type of wood that you have, how big of pieces of wood that you put in for slow burns or all night burns, that kind of a thing. And that's where a lot of creosote will build up when you're trying to do a long night burn, that you just want it to last as long as you can. So, you shut the air off and you try to let it just be, coals and kind of smolder all night long, enough to keep stuff going, so you don't have to get out of bed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to reload the stove up. But if you do operate the stove that way, that means every so often you want to have a good hot burn going. And if it means opening up the door or the windows just because it's just getting so hot in there, well, so be it. But that's safer in the long run. And it got to the point where we'd have our early Friday evening burn about, I think that was once a week.
Yeah.
We'd have a good hot Friday night burn for several hours. And yeah. So the main thing is learn to burn in your particular wood stove. Each stove has its own character, and be safe.
What happens if you do have a chimney fire?
Oh, if you have a chimney fire break out, usually you'll know because you may hear a roar from the chimney pipe itself, from the fire swirling up and around. And if that does happen, then what I would suggest you do is close off the dampers and then slowly open up the wood stove door. And if you have a spray bottle with water, just give it a little spray right in the center where the coals are. And that should help to create a big burst of steam. And that would go up the chimney pipe with the steam and smoke that's created from that, and kill the oxygen that's feeding the fire. And usually that will help. Don't put too much water on it. It only needs a little bit to stifle the wood stove, get those temperatures to come back down.
So one sort of quick spritz with a spray bottle, and that makes a cloud of vapor.
And then close the door immediately and let the vapor continue to go up the pipe and starve it of oxygen. Now, in our cabin here, we do have a CO2 detector and an alarm, and we also have a smoke detector alarm, and we have a fire extinguisher here. And around the cabin itself, we try to keep the brush down to a minimum. We have a steel roof on the cabin, and that may help in the event of a forest fire where the sparks are flying. And it's also a good idea to have another place or another space that you can go to other than, for instance, say the cabin or your homestead, your house. If you have somewhere else that you can go to, especially in the winter where you can get warm and stay warm, that'd be, a really good idea. For us, we actually have an ice shack that has a wood stove in it that we can retreat to, that's away from the cabin and our homestead, and that'll get us a place that we can go for shelter should one of the buildings catch fire.
Change your batteries. Remember, once a year, your birthday, Christmas, a special day, change the batteries in your smoke detector and your CO2 detector. If you want to learn more about burning wood in a wood stove, check out this video here.
Well, that's all for this one. We'll see you next time, right here on Cabin Life. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
Over now.
Take care.